It is said that in the summer of 1849, a sickness swept across the country, claiming a lot of lives, both Christians and non-believers. But the people also fear outlaws, bandits, and a new kind of evil. One day, Sarah Worthington's daughter walks to their horse, takes off her gloves, and touches the animal. The animal dies on the spot, much to Sarah's disappointment. Wait, why Sarah's daughter hella white? She goes to town with her daughter to ask the acting sheriff for help. Everyone knows that Sarah's daughter kills everything she touches. This is why the kid is always wearing gloves. Sarah wants to take her to Ross Corner to see a famous preacher in hopes that he can cure her. But the big back deputy says no one in town would want to accompany a freed slave and the child. Besides, she doesn't have enough silver to pay for it. The town doctor, Dr. Steelbender, overhears the conversation but is not interested. Plus, he looking hella drunk. So Sarah decides they'll travel without company. She buys some food from Mr. Grayson's shop and asks the old man to deliver a telegram to Ross Corner and alert the preacher that they are coming. Miss Atwater, a rich woman in town, is not pleased to see the girl. They have made a deal that Sarah is never to take the girl in town. She warns Sarah that the next time it happens, she'll have them both hanged. I can smell that wrinkly whore's folds from here. The sickness has taken so many lives that people have lost faith in Dr. Bender. They think he can't even save anybody. So the doctor always uses a liquid solution of sedative to help himself sleep. But this causes hallucinations, and he imagines seeing his dead daughter Annie talking to him. Sarah lives on a farm with her daughter and a simpleton named Edward Yatch. Edward thinks the Underground Railroad was an actual railroad.
This Tubman woman, she's been building a railroad under the ground for years.
He's a bit restarted. The farm used to belong to a man named Mr. Worthington. He freed Sarah and gave her the farm when he was on his deathbed. One night, Miss Atwater learns about Dr. Bender passing out in the middle of town again. They don't want someone like him around. Because she owns the town's bank, her words carry weight. She tells the doctor that he's way behind on his bills and he should either pay or leave town for good. So the doctor thinks about taking Sarah's offer just to earn some money. He visits Sarah one night and tells her he'll take her to Ross Corner. They will leave at sunrise the next day. The next early morning, Edward jumps the doctor, thinking that he's an intruder. Lucky for Edward, Sarah shows up before Dr. Bender can beat him up. She defends Edward from the doctor, explaining that he may have an extra chromosome. Sarah hands some papers to Edward, saying that she's leaving him the farm. She doesn't know if she'll return safely, so she's handing him the property. Edward doesn't understand the situation, but there's not much time left to explain. While traveling, Dr. Bender says he doesn't believe that there is evil in the girl. He doesn't believe in God as well. He thinks that Sarah's daughter is just sick. However, he continues to avoid any conversation about his dead wife. It turns out that his wife and Sarah's husband, Joseph, had an affair. Joseph was hanged, and the doctor's wife took her own life. This has haunted both the doctor and Sarah all this time. On their first night, a duo of bandits, Miss White and Gibson, attack them. The doctor is told to let go of his gun. Then Miss White takes all their food and water, even asks her to remove her clothes because she's nasty. She promises not to steal their horses so they can still return home. However, they will take Sarah's daughter as leverage. They promise to leave the kid at a ravine where they can find her. Before the bandits can leave, Edward comes out of nowhere, jumps, and attacks Gibson. Gibson accidentally shoots Miss White, so she immediately flees with all their supplies. The huge man starts to strangle Sarah, but she has managed to grab a gun and shoot him dead. The next day, with no food and water, they continue their journey. This time, Edward is with them. The restarted kid has followed them from town, and now they can't tell him to turn back. Hungry and thirsty, Bender decides to go scouting around, only to find a body that was cleanly cut up and laid out like a crime scene. The sight of that would have made me into a troglodyte. When trying to examine the girl, she refuses to be touched, so Bender gives her a labubu. Bender says he doesn't see any sort of sickness inside her. Edward suddenly faints from lack of food and water, so Bender lets him smell his fart in vial form. Luckily, he wakes, and the group finds another group in the middle of nowhere. Maggie is the oldest. With her are her sad-looking niece, Emma, and oldest son, Stanton.
I just got tired of looking at him, I suppose.
So she put a bag over his head. She offers to share the last of their food with the group. She says she and her family came to the West for the gold rush. The group was big and came in 12 wagons. But it didn't take long for the natives to attack them, butchering most of the men in the family. The second attack was worse, as it was perpetuated by white men who assaulted all the women and killed the rest of the men. The only one they didn't touch was Stanton, who had the sickness and was butt ugly. While the doctor looks around, he sees an empty crib in one of the tents and figures out that the group must have cooked the child. At this point, Sarah and Edward have almost taken their first bite of the offered meal. Seeing that the guests are terrified, Maggie finally drops the act. She warns the doctor not to shoot Stanton or she will snap the little girl's neck. Then Maggie removes the girl's gloves to taste the child's hand, unaware of the consequences. Suddenly, she drops on the floor and starts vomiting blood. A native shows up and kills Stanton from behind, leaving Emma the sole survivor of their family, who is mourning the loss of her baby. The next day, the native, whose name is Chief William, joins their group. He says he's looking for some travel companion, preferably white. However, Dr. Bender is suspicious of him, so Chief William reveals his scarred head and says the French attacked his village when he was just a boy, and he was then sold off to the British. He complains that the French never bathed and smelled something fierce. The Kashan tribe took him in because of his language skills. However, he couldn't protect them from the white riders who came to slaughter them. So he was sent away and could only return if he came back with stronger magic. Their tribe believes that their god has an evil twin who still lurks among us, and you can use his power as a talisman. To gain their trust, Chief Williams helps them find some water source. Edward gets embarrassed when the young girl catches him watching as Sarah takes a bath. He tries to explain himself, saying he'd tear his heart out for Sarah. That night, Chief William prepares dinner for them. Despite all this, Dr. Bender remains suspicious. Even Edward is not safe from his suspicions. So Sarah reveals that after her husband was hanged, the sheriff visited her, pretending to look for the responsible party. While they were praying, the sheriff assaulted Sarah. He would have killed her had Edward not killed the sheriff first. They buried the body and kept it a secret since Sarah got pregnant and gave birth to a baby girl, which explains why the child came out extra white. The police genes took over. Unfortunately, everything she touches dies, and people finally learn the truth about how she was conceived. Edward gets sad as he looks at Sarah, and the next day, Dr. Bender finds Edward dead, with his heart torn from his chest. Realizing the girl and Chief William are gone, they follow the horse's tracks until they find a burnt settlement. It's likely the fire occurred just a few hours prior, and to Sarah's shock, her little daughter is in the middle of it all, unharmed. Is this Khaleesi's origin story? Dr. Bender tries convincing her that it's the work of bounty hunters or another tribe. While the doctor buries Edward's body, Sarah takes the girl somewhere. Dr. Bender looks for them and finds Sarah drowning her daughter. He tries stopping her, but the pistol blows off in his hand as he shoots the air and fragments hit Sarah's shoulder. The doctor pulls the girl out of the water and saves her life, but Sarah's body floats down the river and is gone. Dr. Bender carries the child to Ross Corner, but the townspeople have heard of the girl's abilities and want them gone. Then Preacher Ross, who is in a wheelchair, approaches and finally introduces himself. He announces that the child should be cared for because she contains all that is evil in the world and that the devil is inside her. The preacher proclaims that he will perform an exorcism on the girl soon. For the meantime, the doctor and the little girl will stay over at the preacher's house. The doctor holds on to his belief that the girl is just sick, and it's the same sickness that took his daughter from him. But the preacher encourages him that Santa Claus is certainly real. But later that night, the Foyne doctor is attacked. He wakes up outside with his hand chained to an iron ball. The preacher looks down at him. Beside him is Miss White. It turns out that the preacher sent Miss White and Gibson to make sure that the girl never made it to Ross Corner. Preacher Ross knows that the people think the girl is the devil, and he fears that if he never gets the evil out of her, or that people in his town start dying, the townspeople will think of him as a fraud. It's either cure the girl or kill her, and the choice is to kill the girl. The preacher orders Miss White to push the doctor off the cliff and to let the desert kill him. Then the preacher, his house staff, and Miss White return to Ross Corner. Luckily, Dr. Bender has survived the fall despite having multiple injuries. He hallucinates once more and sees his dead daughter. Annie tells him it's not his fault that she died, and that he tried his best to save her. Then she tells his father to break his bones if he can't bend the shackles. And so the doctor proceeds to break what's left of his masturbating hand in order to free himself. Back at the preacher's house, the house staff takes the girl's teddy bear and pours some sedative into it before placing it back between her arms. Knowing he's running out of time, Dr. Bender gathers what's left of his strength to climb back up. Surprisingly, Sarah shows up to help him. She has survived the gunshot and went to look for her daughter and the doctor. However, she doesn't feel like she can show her face to her child after she tried to kill her. so she begs the doctor to save the girl himself. Dr. Bender kills the house staff first before he barges into the preacher's house. There he shoots Miss Whitey first before turning his attention to the child. The poor girl is already unconscious, and the preacher says she's already dead. To Dr. Bender's surprise, the preacher is standing straight and walking towards him. He can't believe that his legs are now working. Then to his surprise, Preacher Ross hits him with an iron bar. He tries to kill the doctor by pushing the teddy bear laced with the liquid solution to his face. However, it's the same solution Bender used to force hallucinations with, so he has a high tolerance against it. The doctor still has enough strength to pull the trigger and shoot the Wonder Bread multiple times. Then he tries to wake up the little girl. When he fails, he takes the pistol and is about to shoot himself. But he hears the child humming a song and sees her smiling at him. For a moment, he is frightened. Then a man kicks the door open and threatens to kill him. But Sarah manages to shoot this man from behind. Now she's finally reunited with her daughter. Years later, Sarah's daughter has grown into a young woman. She writes about her experiences, though she can't be sure what happened to the preacher afterward. She still wears gloves to this day, as her hands still kill everything she touches. And this is the origin story of Rogue from X-Men. This was a surprisingly decent film, and I really enjoyed DeWanda Wise and Guy Pearce in this. What did you guys think of this one?
Hey, if you like this video, make sure you subscribe now and turn on the notification because YouTube isn't recommending my videos. And if you like to watch more foolishness, click here or here.